Welcome to the deep dive. And a very big welcome to our first deep dive of 2026.
It's great to be kicking things off.
Every year, we try to find that single foundational concept that's really defining the technological frontier. And this year, wow, we are starting with a huge one.
Massive one.
We're looking at how we transform the idea of responsibility from, an aspiration and a nice to have into an actual engineering discipline.
We're calling it the science of responsible innovation.
Exactly. And it's not just some academic exercise. It feels like the essential update to the innovation playbook we've been using for decades.
It is. The speed and the sheer scale of today's tech. I mean, you're talking advanced AI, engineered biology, totally new forms of computing.
Right.
The problems they create aren't necessarily new, but they're amplified to a point where they could threaten systemic stability.
Okay, so let's unpack that amplification. There's a really critical historical analogy that came up immediately.
The security one?
The security one. For the last 30 years, every tech organization learned a really brutal lesson. You cannot bolt security onto a product after it's already shipped. It just doesn't
Well,
work.
it can't. It fails every time.
The security had to be designed in, it had to be architected, tested, audited, right from the very first line of code.
And that shift created the standard we now call secure by design.
And it didn't happen because engineers suddenly got moralistic. It happened because the complexity made reactive failures, well, they were just too expensive.
Too damaging, existential in some cases. And that is the perfect parallel for right now. We are at that same kind of inflection point.
But the scope is just so much wider now.
Vastly wider. This is about governing the entire creation and deployment of systems that literally reconfigure human agency and power.
Systems that can bypass or just completely stress existing laws and institutions.
Or even make them obsolete. So it's not just about protecting a digital perimeter anymore. It's about protecting the whole social contract that even allows technology to flourish in the first place.
I have to pause on that.
Yeah.
Because, wait, the secure by design comparison sounds great, but security protects us from outsiders, from bad actors.
Right.
Responsibility, in this sense, is about protecting society from us, from the builders. Isn't that a much, much tougher sell?
It is a much tougher sell, no question.
I mean, you're asking innovators to slow down, to potentially limit what their tech can do, to impose costs on themselves.
You are, but the emerging consensus is that it's the only durable path to progress. If the systems we build end up destabilizing the markets or the societies they operate in, then that progress is just brittle. It's short-lived.
So that's the mission then for 2026. Exploring how responsibility stops being a moral checklist.
And becomes a real engineering discipline, responsible by design.
And that premise is so powerful. The central question isn't, can we build it anymore? It's, can we govern its creation and deployment without breaking everything?
Exactly. And to get there, we have to start with why the frameworks we have now, like traditional ethics, just don't scale.
That's a perfect place to start. Ethics gives us the language for values, right? Fairness, dignity, autonomy.
It's excellent for that. It sets moral guardrails, it articulates what we should aim for, but it's, by its nature, very abstract. It's interpretive, not prescriptive.
So is that where the term ethics washing comes from?
Yeah.
When it's just a PR function, not a design function?
That's exactly what happens. It's the danger. Ethics arrives too late in the game. It's a review process after the architecture is already fixed.
After the incentives are locked in.
And the product is basically ready to ship. At that point, all you can do is harm mitigation. You're putting a bandage on a wound instead of preventing the injury in the first place.
Right. You can't just tell a product team to avoid bias. That doesn't tell them how to engineer the trade-off between, say, representativeness and accuracy.
You can't. If you tell a high-speed machine learning team in Shenzhen or Bangalore to uphold societal values without concrete metrics, they're going to say, show me the pull request.
We have to give them the tools. And that's what's so interesting about this push to treat responsibility as a science. It makes three really specific, really strong claims. First, that responsibility has to be operationalized.
Meaning you can translate it into concrete requirements, into defined metrics, auditable processes that actually shape technical decisions.
So it stops being a philosophy assignment.
And it starts being a set of requirements on a JRA board.
Okay, second claim. It can be optimized.
Yes. There are demonstrably better and worse ways to align some new, complex technology with human values. We can actually iterate and improve on that alignment.
And third, it evolves.
It has to, because these massive systems interact with the real world and the risks change constantly. So responsibility needs continuous measurement, feedback, adaptation, just like you track system performance.
So this whole reframing, it pulls the discussion out of the philosophy seminar.
And puts it right into engineering reviews, product roadmaps, and maybe most importantly, into capital allocation decisions. So if we're going to treat this as an engineering discipline, we need an architecture. And the material we're looking at organizes this around 5 core pillars. Let's start with pillar 1, shifting from feature thinking to systems thinking.
This is so fundamental. Most technological harm, it doesn't come from one single malicious feature.
No.
It comes from system-level effects, unintended feedback loops, emergent behaviors, misaligned incentives that you only see when the system scales up.
So if you're only looking at the feature, you're missing the whole environment it exists in.
You miss the whole picture.
Can you give us a quick example of that?
Right.
A brittle success that systems thinking might have helped with?
Sure, think about the early gig economy platforms. The feature efficiently matching labor was a huge success.
Massive success.
But that was feature thinking. It ignored the system. It ignored the regulatory ecosystem, the human labor supply chains, the second and third order effects on city infrastructure, worker rights.
All the downstream consequences.
All of it. The system worked brilliantly for a few years, but those externalities led to backlash, legal fights, and eventually very expensive restructuring. A systems thinker would have tried to bake in resilience for that stuff from the start.
That makes perfect sense. So for AI, it would mean looking at where the data comes from, the labor used to label it, not just the model's final performance score.
Exactly. Or for biotech, it means considering supply chain risks and dual use potential right alongside the molecule's therapeutic function.
Okay, let's move to pillar 2. This one tackles that feeling that this is all impossible, that you can't predict the future. It's called anticipatory risk, without the illusion of omniscience.
Right, because the goal isn't to perfectly predict the future. That's impossible. The goal is preparedness.
We know we're going to be surprised.
We know it, so we have to focus on identifying plausible risks and stress testing our assumptions now. Instead of asking what will happen, the display asks different questions, like where are the irreversibilities, or what happens if the system is used at massive scale or under adversarial pressure.
So what are the actual techniques here? How do you practice being prepared?
This is where things like formal scenario analysis, really deep red teaming, and horizon scanning become mandatory.
And it's not just about finding bugs in the code.
Not at all. It's about trying to break the core assumption the whole product is built on. And crucially, it means designing systems so that when they do inevitably fail, they fail gracefully.
And visibly.
And visibly. You want a controlled shutdown, not a systemic collapse.
Okay, pillar 3. This one really resonates with our current public discourse, the collapse of proportionality.
Oh, it's the constant state of maximalist debate, isn't it? When every single acceleration is framed as reckless and every risk is framed as catastrophic.
Whether it's AI ending humanity or CRISPR changing our species forever.
Right. It makes rational trade-offs impossible. Leaders just get stuck between paralysis on one side and overreach on the other.
So that collapse of proportionality is that endless debate where one side screams, this will kill us all, and the other says, it's just a fancy spreadsheet with no room in the middle.
That's precisely it. And the science's role here is to restore that middle ground. It creates shared frameworks for reasoning about the magnitude of a risk, the likelihood, its reversibility, and who gets the harm versus who gets the benefit.
So you can actually weigh things.
You can weigh an immediate high-certainty life-saving benefit against a high-uncertainty, high-severity future risk. It makes the tensions explicit and governable. We can stop fighting over philosophy and start negotiating engineering constraints.
On to pillar 4, which is institutional fit and capacity alignment, a reminder that tech doesn't land in a vacuum.
Absolutely not. It lands in societies with institutions, laws, norms, markets, and you have to ask, is this system ready for the world it's about to enter?
So if a new tech spreads faster than regulators can even hire people who understand it.
You have an institutional mismatch. Do regulators have the technical capacity to oversee it? Do courts have the frameworks to adjudicate harm when it goes wrong?
That's a huge point. Technology that outruns governance doesn't stay free for long.
No, it just invites clumsy reactionary overcorrection later on, which stifles the good innovation too. Sometimes responsibility means slowing down or even investing directly in building that institutional capacity as part of your budget.
And that brings us to the last pillar, number 5, continuous oversight and adaptive governance. It's not over at launch.
Never. It's like security. It is never done. Complex systems evolve. Users find new ways to use them. Adversaries probe them. You need robust post-deployment monitoring.
Clear audit trails, ways to roll things back.
And a culture that actually rewards people for disclosing failures or vulnerabilities early rather than hiding them for fear of bad PR.
That cultural shift alone is a massive institutional challenge.
It is. It transforms the whole engineering mandate from build it and release it to build it, release it, and continuously sustain its alignment with society.
Okay, so if we're going to treat responsibility as a science, it has to be measurable. This is where it gets really practical.
Right. And we're not trying to reduce ethics to a single number, but we need metrics to help us reason about these complex risks.
And we do that with something called proxy metrics.
Exactly. These are quantitative indicators that track if our design intentions are holding up in the real world. Think of key risk indicators, or KRIs, tied directly to misuse or systemic dependency.
The sources also mentioned auditability and governance latency. Can you just quickly define those?
Sure. Auditability is about decision provenance. Can we trace why an AI made a high-stakes decision? Can we reconstruct the data and the model version?
And governance latency.
That's literally the time gap, the
Yeah.
time between a critical risk being found and the oversight body, like the board, being able to mandate a fix. You want that measured in hours or days, not months.
Measurement doesn't eliminate judgment, but it disciplines it.
Perfectly put.
So let's tie it all together. What does responsible by design actually look like on the factory floor? What's different?
Well, for one, you break down the silos. You have interdisciplinary teams, engineers, economists, policy experts working as co-designers right from the start.
Not just as late-stage reviewers who get ignored.
Exactly. And those red teams we talked about, they need to have real authority. Their findings can't just be decoration on a compliance report. They have to shape the roadmap.
And it also means staged deployment strategies, right?
Yeah.
Not just a big global launch.
Yes. You constrain the early use cases, maybe geographically or by function. You expand only as the evidence of safety and robustness and institutional fit comes in.
But the single most crucial change has to be ownership.
Has to be.
A science of responsible innovation can't just live in a safety department. It has to be part of the business strategy, part of how capital gets allocated. It has to hit the P&L.
That's when it gets real. Leaders have to treat this the way they now treat cybersecurity or financial controls, as an existential risk that demands board-level attention.
And the urgency for this is just paramount now, isn't it? It's all about speed.
It's all about speed. The old linear model of innovation, invent something, then it diffuses, then society regulates it. That's totally collapsed.
Society used to have time to adapt. Not anymore. Foundation models hit global scale in months. Biological techniques spread faster than any regulatory body can even form a consensus.
So without this rigorous science, we're basically running uncontrolled experiments on civilization, and trust becomes the scarcest resource. Paradoxically, going fast now depends on being aligned, not on being reckless.
So responsibility isn't the opposite of progress.
It is the fundamental condition for durable progress.
And that framework translating responsible by design from an abstract idea into concrete practice, that's going to be the central focus of the Connected Ideas project for all of 2026. This foundational science will underpin every deep dive we do.
I'll leave you with the final provocative thought from the primer that guided this whole deep dive. At the frontier of technology, humanity is the experiment. This science is how we ensure that experiment is worth running.